Well, hello, everybody. I'm Dan Turbyville, and this is another episode of Powerhouse Fence Show. This time, we're going to talk about job numbers and purchase orders. This is something I've wanted to talk about for a while, and I never have done it. And here we are. Today will be the day. So, we're going to, like I said, job numbers, purchase orders. We're going to go into what they are, what they do, why you should use them, how we should use them. Feel free to drop any comments or anything that you have below, and I'll be happy to try my best to answer your questions, but no promises. So, in the description, we still have a link to our Make a Wish fundraiser that we are still running. If you don't know, we've committed to grant one wish ourselves, and we're trying to see if the rest of the fence industry will also grant a wish. So feel free to click that link if you feel so inclined to donate anything. So as normal, our sponsors are Memphis Fence Company, MFC Manufacturing, and Simpalo. All three of those are the companies that we operate here in Memphis, Tennessee. We have a few partners listed. We have the Thornton Fence Consulting Group. They host events around the country, and they will also travel to you. And I think now they're doing some like Zoom meeting type stuff, and they have multiple different options for consulting deals. But if you want to talk efficiency and operations and things like that, definitely reach out to that team, and they will get you squared away. EZG Manufacturing, they make the big orange equipment that you see at all the trade shows. They make a bunch of stuff for the fence industry and for other industries. And last, we have Fence News, which is a monthly publication that gets sent out, I think monthly. The big magazine, it has Pete and Jake in it. And so check them out. I believe it's free to subscribe, so it doesn't hurt. All right. So we are live. There is a phone number on the bottom of the screen, 901-878-4987. If anybody wants to call in, I will do my best to make sure that happens and maybe talk to you and see what's going on. So today I finished up an episode of the Founders podcast this morning. It was about a guy named Jim Simons. I won't get into what the whole podcast was about. Go check it out if you want to hear it. But towards the end of it, they talked about a guy, and the way that I interpreted it was this guy basically was scoured. He scoured the earth trying to find the best talent available, right? So the best people that he could employ anywhere in the world, and he went after them, and he did everything that he could to try to recruit these people. There was another guy on there they talked about, and they said that this guy, every person that he met, he'd look them in the eye, he'd shake their hand, and he'd pull them in close to him, and he'd say, "I want you to come work for me." And it didn't matter who it was, right? So if it was a vendor, a sales rep, if he was at a restaurant, no matter where he was, that was his introduction to people. And he constantly was trying to recruit people. And I found that to be pretty interesting too. So, and then the next podcast that started playing was Grant Cardone. And I think that the title of it was about building an obsessed team. I really like the word obsessed. I think it's great that your career path is your obsession or is an obsession, maybe not the obsession, right? But I think it's okay to be obsessed with what you're doing and to have like an unrelenting desire to be better at it. I really like that word. But anyway, so I only listened to maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes of of the podcast episode, but he was talking a lot about, finding people that are obsessed with the same blank as you are, right? Whatever that is, and having them on your team. So a lot of that really just reminded me how important it is to always be looking for the right people and to try to hire the people that are the best of the best and try to have them on your team. And I'm happy to say that I feel like we have a lot of those people here. We could always improve, right? I mean, there's people that could do my job better than me out there. So there's always room for improvement and stuff. But I think we have a lot of solid people on our team here. So I'm proud of what we do. Anyway, so moving on. Thank you, listeners. As always, I appreciate all of you tuning in. We do this for you. And We try to deliver meaningful content, at least content that I think is meaningful, and hopefully it's meaningful to you as well. If you want to hear us talk about something, if you want to see somebody on the show, anything like that, let us know and we'll do our best to make that happen. So let's get into it now. Man, I feel like I've gotten that whole intro piece down to where we're about to hit 6 minutes, so that feels pretty good. So we've like I said, I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. And so I'm going to start with job numbers, and then we'll roll into purchase orders and we'll kind of connect those two together here in a little bit. So first of all, what is a job number? Well, to put that very simply, it's a unique identifier that's assigned to a job, a task, a project, something along those lines. They can be numbers, they can be letters, they can be a combination of those two things. They can be whatever you want them to be. There's no rules of what your job number has to be. The only thing is it's something that works for you. Mark Cobb, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. Hold on a second. Let me see. I'm pushing buttons by myself, but check out that sign sitting right there. And I have another one. So yeah, so the job numbers can be whatever you want them to be, right? It just has to make sense for you and your organization, and it has to be something useful for you. So I like to look into the history of things. I enjoy it. And so I did that with job numbers. I will admit the next one, purchase orders, the history of it's a little bit more exciting, but job numbers were first mentioned in a publication by J. Slater Lewis in 1896 called Commercial Organization of Factories. And he introduced a system to distinguish between jobs and work orders. I guess I didn't read the publication, but he kind of laid the groundwork for job numbers and things like that in this publication back in 1896. And it allowed for more granular tracking of manufacturing task, right? So granular tracking of task. Let's remove that word manufacturing from it and let's just focus on granular tracking of task. He emphasized the importance of assigning reference numbers to each operation for accurate labor cost and workflow management. And like I said, that later rolled into what we now have as job numbers in the modern day. Seth, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you. So then a guy named Frederick W. Taylor refined job numbering a little bit more, and he did it with scientific management principles when he was studying efficiency and things like that. And so he kind of stressed the importance of assigning numbers too, but he, from what I took, did it in a more scientific way. There was a lot more advancements, but there's just a couple of the early ones. Like I said, first time anything like a job number, any of that was ever mentioned was in 1896. So they've been around for a long time. So what do job numbers do? Well, they allow for an easy way of tracking projects across multiple tasks. So we'll start with a contract. And this is where we assign a job number here. There's some people that assign a job number or a number to a project when they estimate the job, and it follows that same number follows it all the way through the process. So I kind of feel like we could refine our numbering system a little bit because we kind of have like multiple, right? Because we'll use numbers for proposals or for estimates or bids, whatever you want to call them. So we have a numbering system that we use for that. But then we have another numbering system that we use when the job is sold. And so that was something kind of interesting that I ran into here is just the thought of combining those two things and maybe using the same number all the way across the board. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if I'm going to do it, but it's an interesting thought. But anyway, we assign the job number at the contract. So when we purchase material, we issue a PO, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And that PO has the job number referenced on it. When we hire subcontractors, we issue them also purchase order, but again, has the job number referenced on there. When we receive material, there's reference numbers on there. When we fill out our timesheets, or we're trying to like make that electronic, but we've kind of been running into some roadblocks. So I'll update you on that later if we get a system that works for us. But when we bill time to a job, when our guys are filling out time sheets, all of that kind of stuff, all of that's done by job number. When we bill, everything in QuickBooks all has job numbers on it. So, I mean, that job number is everywhere that we're doing anything with that job. So it makes it easier to match a cost with a job or time with a job than it would be just using the name of the project. What happens is we wind up calling jobs different names. And sometimes you get these descriptions of like, oh, it's going around that parking lot that's over there by that railroad track, the one off of such and such street. And I mean, you kind of wind up with like these type of vague descriptions a lot of times. And will also, some people might call the name whoever the customer is. Some people might call the name by the location that it's going to be or that it is. Like, and then you kind of wind up playing that game telephone sometimes too, right? Where like the words actually kind of get twisted around from person to person. And so job numbers go on everything. And that really like kind of ties all that stuff back together, right? Instead of relying on words that can be a little bit messed up here and there. So that's that's where job numbers are a big deal, is connecting everything together, right? Because what we want to do is we want to minimize the amount of time that we're spending every year saying, what job was that for? Right. So we get a time sheet that doesn't have a job number. Now the person who's entering the time into QuickBooks has to call somebody or walk around the office and be like, hey, what job did so and so go on Tuesday? Right. And it just is, it can get messy. So, our job numbers are laid out in such a way that it like this. So we have like C25001 would be an example of a job number for us. And the C is for commercial, which we use for like our business to business commercial stuff. People call it negotiated work, maybe. Like the car lot down the street calls and they want a fence put around it, or some manufacturing, distribution, whatever. It's kind of those like direct call in customers. And so we use C for those. And then the 2.5 is the year that we write the contract, because remember, that's when we assign the job number. So it's not when we bid the job, but it's when the contract is awarded or we, get whatever approval documentation we're going to get. And then the 001 is the sequence. There's a lot of examples of job numbers that exist that are far more complex than that. I mean, some of them are like 15 digits long. It might work for you. You might want that, right? Or you might be able to just start with number one and say job number 1, 2, 3, 4. So, I mean, it can be more or less complex than the system that we use. It works for us. Uh, if you want to, kind of dig into it a little bit more, you can go to Google, or, I learned today that ChatGPT will even make you a SOP for issuing job numbers if that's what you want to do. You just sit down, come up with a system, tell it what you want in there, and it gives you the document. So you can then distribute that. But like I said, a lot of them are really complicated, and they might have, it almost turns into like a VIN number on your car, right? So every digit in the VIN number means something, except for like the last 5 or 6 or something is the sequence number. But all the ones leading up to it's like the year, the manufacturer, where it was built, the options on it, kind of that type of stuff. So, you really can get crazy with them if you want, but we don't. We try to keep it simple. So, if you don't have job numbers, well, I mean, honestly, you might not need them, right? But I mean, if you do plan to scale your business and you're not at a point where you need them, then it doesn't hurt to go ahead and start preparing for the future and go ahead and start working on a system, figure out how you want to number it and start trying to implement it. And you don't want to be, I think with anything, where we wind up a lot, okay, is we wind up in these situations where it's like, oh crap, I need this thing and I need it right now. In fact, I needed it 6 months ago, and now we have to scramble around and try to put excuse me, try to put in a system, and like we need it to work tomorrow, right? And so this is probably one of those things. It's fairly simple to implement. So I don't know if it's worth doing it with the intention of needing them 5 years from now, but if you see it on the horizon that you might need them, probably doesn't hurt to go ahead and start thinking about it. So here's a little added tidbit that probably isn't maybe not the best thing to say, right? But really, we log all of these jobs and we log them all by job number. We're a lot of that stuff happens in Monday. If you don't know, we use Monday.com for a lot of things. But a lot of the job numbers are all logged into Monday, and that's where we keep track of everything. Some of them are logged in like a legitimate paper logbook that sits on somebody's desk. And that logbook, whenever it's entered into QuickBooks, it gets a certain mark on it. And then once the job is billed, it gets another mark on it. So, what does that do for us? Well, one, it gives you a really easy way that you can look back at all of your jobs and make sure that they're all entered into your accounting system, because you don't want a material to show up or a bill to show up for a job and you have no job in your accounting system to tie it to. You don't want people to go out and start turning in timesheets for a job that also doesn't exist in the accounting system. And so we can easily glance through these books or through Monday or whatever that is, and we can see this job is entered, this job is entered. Oh, this one's not. We need to get that done. So it kind of helps keep us on track with all of that a little bit too. And then the next piece of it is it really helps us to make sure that we actually bill all the jobs. Uh, I'd I'd be surprised to hear that we're the only person that's ever done a job and then look back 6 months or a year down the road and realize that we didn't actually bill it. That still, even with job numbers and stuff like that in place, it still happens to us periodically, unfortunately. Um, so far, most of those jobs have been pretty small and it wasn't the end of the world, but it's never a fun phone call when you have to call somebody and be like, "Hey, do you remember that job we did for you like a year ago? Well, it turns out we never sent you a bill. Can we bill you for that?" And we will make those phone calls if we find ourselves in that situation. We indeed will pick up the phone and call them, and we just say, "Hey, we screwed up. Um, can we bill you?" And if they say no, then we won't bill them, right? We just have to write it off. But anyway, having these logbooks and everything in place, again, we put a mark on it when we enter it in the accounting system. We put a mark on it when we bill it. And so all of that stuff just kind of helps us to keep track and make sure that we did all of those. All right. Man, that was quick. So, job numbers, again, for us, we assign it at the contract. Some people assign it when they do the estimate and follow that same number all the way through. Doesn't matter. I like doing it the way we do it because I can look at it and I know what department that job belongs to, and then I know the year. And so if something comes up 2 or 3 years down the road and I have the job number, well, I immediately can tell the department and the year just by seeing the beginning of that job number. So that's something to think about too. If you are going to design or come up with a way of numbering your jobs, is think about the information that you want to get out of the job number if you look at it 2 or 3 years down the road. Right. So one piece of it is what it can do for you now. Another piece of it is what it can do for you in the future. And so just build your system in a way that makes sense in both places, right? So you don't, again, that's all up to you, right? I mean, I personally wouldn't start with number one. I would at least put a year at the beginning of it or something like that. But something to think about. So I promised that the story of the history of purchase orders was a little bit more interesting. Um, so a purchase order is really a document, right? That is actually a legal document that is binding, and it's accepts the price, or it enters into an agreement, right? So if you are going to buy some material from a supplier, you can issue a purchase order. And that purchase order is saying, "Hey, XYZ supplier, we agree to buy this and this material from you, and this is how much we said we'd pay for it." Um, so that's kind of what it does. And we use them. I mean, if we're going to hire a subcontractor, a lot of times when we buy tools, equipment, I what I really want is I want a purchase order to be assigned every time that we spend money. So that's kind of the rule, right? Or the goal is that every time we spend money, there's a purchase order number that's attached to it some kind of way. Gets a little tricky sometimes because you might, I mean, when you go drop a truck off for an oil change, uh, depending on, or, maybe not an oil change isn't a good example. Maybe you drop it off because you're like, hey, this thing's driving funny. Something sounds weird. Well, the shop doesn't know the price of what it is because they don't know what's wrong with the truck until they dig into it and start finding out what's going on. So that can be a weird scenario where when you drop it off, do you issue the purchase order at that point? We don't actually. We issue the purchase order when we get an estimate from the shop. So they'll send us an estimate to repair whatever's wrong with it, and then we issue a purchase order at that point. Um, but you do run into those weird things, right? Where you don't really know the price on the front end, and you just have to decide. So, I mean, I don't think, I don't sweat too much of that. I just do the best that I can, and we all do the best that we can. It's not perfect, but we try. So, the history of actually procurement documents dates back to ancient civilizations. So this is the part that was super interesting to me. One, that it dates back to ancient civilizations and that historians know that it dates back that far. That's pretty interesting. Um, oh, hold on. Pause that real quick. So Isaac Alexander is here. Good evening. Thanks for stopping by. And then what does Mark say? We use custom numbers and job numbers. Everything we print has a job number that is tied to the print specs. Without job numbers, we'd not be able to find a print job the next year when they reorder. I like that. When they reorder. Yeah. So again, makes it easy to keep up with stuff, right? You just have a number and you go into whatever system you're using and you can search for that number and boop, there it is. So, all right. So procurement documents, they date all the way back to ancient civilizations. So in 3000 BC, Egyptian scribes, get this, documented labor and material requirements for pyramids on papyrus scrolls. So this is very fascinating to me that I assume, again, I didn't research into this, right? But I'm assuming that there are papyrus scrolls that historians have or that have been found by archaeologists or whatever that is that showed them ordering labor and material for pyramids. But there's no document of how they built the stinking pyramids. That doesn't make any sense. So I guess blueprints weren't invented until later on, or I mean, maybe they lost them all. Like I don't know. That none of that makes sense to me. How there's purchase documents for the stuff, but there's not any record of how it was done. So that was the part that's fascinating. Um, Past that, ancient Rome, they also used procurement documents and contracts and things like that when the Roman Empire would engage in trade with private suppliers. So, obviously, these early documents and early records are what led to the modern day procurement documents, purchase orders, contracts, things along those lines. Pretty pretty interesting that they go that far back into history, but I mean, at the same time, it does make sense, right? Um, so anyway, so what does a purchase order do? Well, in my own terms, it solidifies the deal and allows for better tracking for both parties. So it's going to lock in the price. Whatever price we negotiate, we talk about. If I, you know, order some of these signs that Mark Cobb's talking about printing, then I'm going to get an estimate from them and we're going to enter into an agreement, right? So that whenever I get the signs, this is how much I agreed to pay for them. So it locks in that price and it also makes us both accountable. So it makes me accountable for paying the amount that we agreed to pay, but it makes them accountable for delivering the product that they agreed to deliver the way that they agreed to deliver it. And here's a really cool one for me. I don't know why that whatever. So it helps to track job costing, right? Job costing is great. It's awesome. We talked a lot about job costing and accounting and different things like that a few weeks ago. So your purchase order helps you to track that job cost and it has a job number on it. So now whenever now you can see those things are connected, right? So the job number and the purchase orders are connected because your purchase order has a job number and the job number ties it back to a specific job or task or project or whatever you want to say. Um, a lot of times we'll do weird things, right? So I know I'm kind of bouncing back to the job number piece, but we create jobs when we build a truck bed. If you saw our booth at Fence Tech in Nashville, we had this big thing that unfolded and had stuff hanging on it and all of that. We had a job that we created for building that. So that way we could assign all the cost and everything to that thing. So it's not, that's why I keep saying, like, for different jobs, tasks, projects, whatever that is, because we'll use it for our own internal stuff. Case in point, building the trade show booth, or if we build a truck bed, or anything like that that we're going to do, we assign, still create a job, and it puts all of the cost and everything into that job. So it's not just, I mean, there's no rules, right? You just do it how it works for you, and you're not limited to only doing it for a fence installation job. Now, going back to the way that you number things, like you might number your fence installation jobs one way, and you might have another letter or another number or something like that that it starts off with if it is building a truck bed or building a trade show booth, right? But it makes it super easy to know how much did we spend building this booth that we took to Fence Tech in Nashville in 2024. Well, I don't know off the top of my head, but I could go look in QuickBooks and it's going to tell me how much money we spent on it. So, which is all important, right? It's important to know how much money you spend on things. I know that's earth-shattering information, but it's good to track all of those costs. So, yeah, again, back to the purchase orders. They're connected to job numbers because you need the job number for the purchase order. So it helps us with inventory management because now we have a record of what was created. So we have a purchase order that not a record of what was ordered. Sorry. So now we have this purchase order and it shows what we ordered. And if it's for a project or if it's for stock or some random thing, then we can look at that and we can see what did we order, who did we order it from, how much are we going to pay for it, all of this information. If you do a really good job, your payment terms will be listed on there and stuff like that as well. But again, if you do it in a way that it is a legal document, that it is a legal document that binds you two together. Um, we're not the best at actually sending like a purchase order form. We do have them, but we don't use it all the time. A lot of times what we do is we might fill out the form. We always need to make a record of what we're buying, right? But a lot of times we'll just issue the number. And so, I mean, I might be on the phone with somebody or send them an email and be like, all right, use PO number, da 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 da. And like, I will create some sort of record internally, but I might not send all of that to them. So that's where we kind of fall short in the purchase order world is if you wanted to do the best, then you would have a good document that was your purchase order that had all the terms and everything spelled out on it, the shipping address, all of the details. And then you would actually send that whole document when you purchase something. I think that's the ideal way to do it. I mean, if you've ever been assigned a PO by some corporate America for doing a fence job, you've probably seen one that is like a really well put together purchase order. We're not to that level all the time. We're really ever not to that level, but we do sometimes send the form. So sorry. So it's going to create a paper trail. And what I like about this is it's not like I'm not the person that goes out and looks at a job and then bids the job and then orders the material and dispatches the crew and issues the bill and enters the payroll and all of this, right? Like I'm not doing all of those steps. And so there's other people that are involved in getting all of this stuff done for a job. And by having this purchase order, when the person who pays the bills gets the bill, they'll cross-reference that purchase order, whatever documentation we have, and they'll look to verify that everything actually matches. And if there's any questions, the way that we issue purchase order numbers, they know who to go to and they'll go ask them like, "Hey, is this right? Because something on it looks a little funny." And I promise you, there have been countless times where that purchase order document that we created internally showed a discrepancy with what we were billed. And sometimes we mess up, sometimes they mess up. It's just kind of a combination thing, right? But we have that accountability, we have that paper trail, we have documentation showing what we ordered, what we agreed to, all of this stuff. And so you can like issue, I guess, another. I don't know how would you change a purchase order? I don't think it's a change order. Maybe, maybe you issue a change order for the purchase order again if you wanted to be like, do it very well. Um, we may or may not do that all the time. So if you have a really good system in place, then it can prevent multiple people from ordering the same thing. So if you sell a job and two different people decide that they need to order the material for that job, having a good system in place for your purchase orders can prevent that from happening. Same thing with stock material, right? Like we might run out of something because we never run low, right? It's always we're out. And so the person who discovers that we're out is the person who needs to use it right now. And they might go tell four people that we're out of, brace fans, whatever. And so what might happen then is that four people order the same brace fans and they all order 2,000 of them or whatever. And so next thing you know, we have enough brace fans for the next 10 years. So again, a good system for your purchase orders can prevent that type of multi-ordering kind of thing going on. Um, so I don't really know how to tell you how to build that system, right? It's probably an easy way in your inventory management stuff. I know QuickBooks will tell you if you actually utilize the version of QuickBooks we have is the desktop enterprise version. And there's some inventory management stuff in there. From what I understand, it sucks, is what people say, and other things are better. But it will tell you like the quantity you have on hand, the quantity you have on sales order, the quantity you have on purchase order, and the quantity that's available to sell. So again, if you do your purchase orders, we indeed entered them into QuickBooks. And then when we receive the material, we receive that in QuickBooks. And then when we pay the bill, everything matches. And all of that's assigned to our job numbers, or tied to our job numbers. So we create the purchase order numbers uh, similar to the job numbers, right? So we do like my first purchase order this year was D25001. So the D is for Dan, 25 is for the year, and 001 is the sequence number. So now, whenever someone gets this bill and they have the purchase order number on the bill, whether that's somebody receiving material on the yard or somebody entering a bill or whatever that is, they know the person that wrote that PO number because it has D at the beginning. Those are my POs. They know to come ask me about it. Um, Again, a lot of that kind of stuff is just little ways that we've tried to put some of these systems and processes and stuff in place to cut down on the amount of time that people spend roaming around trying to gather information. So now you know who to go directly to in order to ask that question instead of running around to three or four different people and saying, "Hey, did you order this pipe?" It's like, "Oh, I can see that's Dan's PO. Let's go ask him about it." Um, Little things like that are huge time savers. And I mean, you might be dismissive about it and say, "Oh man, I mean, yeah, if they do have to go around, it's going to take them 10 minutes." Okay. Yeah. Well, so they spent 10 minutes and then two other people spent 10 minutes today. Right. And then they're going to do it again tomorrow and again next week. And like you go across, you get to the end of the year and next thing you know, you got 100 hours tied up and people running around trying to figure out what this job was for and what this material's for. And what all this other stuff is for, right? So I think assigning the numbers, assigning the POs, assigning the job numbers, all of that is in the system that we use is just designed to try to cut that down. We don't eliminate it, right? It's just trying to minimize it. So we do record um, whatever we gave the PO for. And so again, this might be done on like our proper purchase order form if we do a really good job at it. It might just be done by taking the quote from the supplier and attaching it to a purchase order form. It might be done by me whenever I order something and I just attach the quote in Monday and I just put a purchase order number and then put the job. Uh, it all just kind of depends, right? But we always want to have some kind of like I want people to send me a quote before I order anything because I want to have that quote to match against the bill that comes in. And so that's kind of my thing, right? Is like, no, if you're going to spend money, you need to have some sort of evidence of that money you're going to spend. And then you need to have some kind of way that we can tie all of this together. So we want to tie the stuff that you ordered to the purchase order and the purchase order to the job. Um, Hopefully that makes sense, right? So you're just connecting the dots, and we're just trying to make an easy way to connect the dots, is what it all is. So I don't I'm kind of a stickler, and I talked about taking the truck to the shop and, if we get tires, if we do anything else, right? If someone calls me and they ask me for a PO when they're dropping the truck off at the shop, then I know I don't know how much that's gonna cost. If it's an oil change, that's one thing, but, I mean, if they're dropping it off for that funny sound or whatever, then I don't know how much it's gonna cost, right? But I am gonna know who's the vendor. I'm gonna know what is it for. So what truck is it? I'm gonna know what's going on with that truck, right? Like I'm gonna gather this information and I'm gonna enter that into my purchase order every time. Um, and so the whole, what are you buying type question, like it might be a summary, right? If I buy 27 different things at one time, I'm probably not going to list out every single little thing, but I am going to attach that quote that I got for those 27 things. So like I said, in my side of it, I'll just put a summary and I'll, might just put it as one line item for material for a job or, something like that. But anyway, there always is some supporting documentation to go along with it. So again, really helps the people paying the bills. When material shows up on the yard and there's a PO number on that document from our supplier, well, now the people in the yard know who to go ask the question to, again, because we followed the system of numbering our POs. So if you don't have purchase orders, you don't really need a fancy system to get started, right? You can go online, you can find a template for it. You can talk to Chat GPT. It will make you a template that you can use. You could just get a notebook and you could handwrite everything on that notebook and maybe like, take the estimate from your supplier, print it off, fold it in half and staple it to the page. I mean, whatever that is, like you don't have to have a fancy system to do it. You just come up with whatever way works for you, right? You probably have a notebook laying around that you could use if you wanted to start issuing purchase orders. It really helps when you go to pay the bill, but it doesn't have to be fancy. So that's pretty much what I have for purchase orders. And so here's my opinion of some things is if you don't have job numbers and you don't have purchase order numbers, I would start by building the system for purchase orders. And I don't know if I'm laggy to y'all, but like I look super laggy on my side. So sorry if that's the case. But yeah, I would start by building the system for purchase orders because I don't remember what I ordered 3 days ago, let alone a month or two from now when we're paying the bill, right? And so I think having a system where you're recording exactly what you're buying, what you're paying for it, and having some place that you keep that and it's verified against the bill when you get it, I think is priority number one of these two things. And not to be dismissive of the job numbers, but I think having the purchase order system in place is more important. Um, a lot of times in our world, we do jobs with subcontractors, and it may have been 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 or 18 months ago when we got the price from the subcontractor, and guess what? I don't remember how much we agreed to pay them. I will try to put all of that stuff in email or text message or in writing somewhere, but I don't always remember it. Oh, no. I definitely am, like, laggy or something. Well, sorry. I don't remember how much I agreed to pay for something, like I said, a few days ago, let alone 18 months ago, a lot of times. Some things, yeah, I can remember pretty decent, but a lot of the jobs that we do, man, we had one particular subcontractor and we were complete garbage at this for a while. And it was like, "Hey, do you remember how much I quoted you for this job?" And I'm like, "Man, I don't know how much we quoted for this job. Like, this has been a year and a half ago, you know?" Um, and so we have I personally have taken it upon myself to really improve in the purchase order world and to get documentation and to get something in writing that I can use to back it up. And that way, 6, 8, 10, 12, 18 months down the road, there's something that I can pull out and say, no, this is what we talked about. This was your scope of work, or this was the material you were going to provide, and this was the money that we were going to provide in exchange. So both of them are important, right? But again, I think the purchase order side of it is more important than the number side of it. So I would start there if I had nothing. And if y'all have any questions about any of that stuff, feel free to reach out to me anytime. This phone number scrolling at the bottom, you can call me on that number anytime you want to. It's not just like a number for this show, really. So, yeah, both of these are vital tools for us to keep our operations straight and for us to try to keep track of everything that's going on. When you're doing like several hundred different projects, then it's a lot of stuff to try to keep track of, and having things documented, having numbers assigned to things, having these systems in place for you to try to keep all of this stuff in order and to try to stay on top of everything is essential. And again, like I've said a couple of times, maybe you're not there, right? Maybe you don't need it now, but it's never too early to start talking about and start thinking about this kind of stuff. So again, we want to make sure that hopefully we're billing everything because we have this log that we keep all of these jobs in where we assign the job numbers. And then when the costs come in for the job, we have a number that we can assign them to. A lot of these customers, we might work for them 4, 5, 6, 10 times a year. And so the customer name is not good enough, right? Sometimes the customer name, the location, the job isn't good enough because we have customers that we go out and replace the same gate for them 2 or 3 times a year, right? Truck drivers hit it over and over and over, and we're out here replacing the gate. So if you just put like replacing the south gate, well, that may have been the same name that was used 4 times in the past. And now people struggle with making sure that time and material and everything is assigned to the right job. Um, so we hopefully do a good job of making sure that our supplier is shipping us the right material and billing us the right items because we have purchase orders and we have other documents associated. So I'll go down a little rabbit hole with that real quick. Um, since we're all, just hanging out, having a good time, may as well. But in Monday, that's where all my purchase orders go in Monday, right? And there's, I don't know, 4, 6 of us, whatever, that are writing purchase orders using Monday. Some people only use the form, like the more proper form to fill out purchase orders. Yeah, I know we should standardize it. I understand that, but I'm just who I am, right? And I just try to be honest. So in Monday, I started building out a board that I think is pretty cool. And the system that I was building out, again, you put the purchase order number, you put the vendor, you put the project that it's for, and I mean you can put like stock material or expense tools or expense, XYZ truck or whatever you want to put in that column. And then in the other column, I have status. So if it's ordered, if it's a problem with the order, if it's received, whatever that is. Well, anyway, so I built all of that stuff. And then I made another board that was the receiving board. And we started down this path and we haven't quite finished it yet, but we will. We'll get there. And the path was that we were going to have an iPad that was on the yard and it was going to be logged into this receiving board on Monday. So anytime that I ordered something, if it was going to be received on the yard, then there's a button on there I can click and it will duplicate that item, put it on the receiving board, and it attaches the quote from the supplier on there so that they have a list of everything that we ordered. So now they have our documents that they can match up with what the supplier actually delivers when it gets here. Then they can go in and they can mark it and say, yeah, it was received. Or if there's any kind of problems, they can log all of that stuff in there. They can attach pictures, things like that. I will say that having pictures, that I didn't even put this in the notes, but I just remembered this. Having pictures of stuff that you receive can save your freaking butt. Okay. So there's been times where we've received a job, a shipment, and some suppliers you get stuff from, and it's like you got to understand their language, right? And so I'm not talking like chain link fence material. I'm talking like, less common things, we'll say. And I don't really know the name of all the parts and pieces required to build this fence or to build this thing. And so in that scenario, it's really hard to take a material list or give the material list to the person on the yard and say, "Hey, make sure everything on here matches." Me doing it, them doing it, whoever doing it, because we don't completely understand the strange part number code system that they use. Right? It's not written out in plain English. It's like complicated. And so there's been times where we receive this stuff and we're like, okay, it all looks good. I don't know. And then we go out and we start trying to do the job and there's parts missing. Well, in those scenarios, those pictures have saved our butt. Whenever we can produce a picture of the load as it showed up on our yard and say, hey, clearly this 24-foot long material that's supposed to be on there is missing. And we couldn't understand what your ticket said. So yeah, pictures when you receive stuff are a big deal. And so again, that board on Monday that I was talking about, the receiving board, it was set up to where you could put pictures of everything as it was received. And again, they had an iPad, so that had a camera on it, right? So that's that's what we're heading towards for the receiving side of the purchase orders, is a nice system for the people in the yard to be able to receive material and take pictures of it, put any problems, anything like that, and it instantly notifies the person that ordered it. That's been another frustration that I've experienced. Is there's been times in my life when we received material just today, and it was some stuff that I ordered, and it was unloaded off the truck, and not one person has yet to say a word to me about it being received, right? Well, this is a project that I'm managing, and the customers all jumping up and down wanting us to come out there. Well, if I didn't happen to look outside and see the truck sitting there with the stuff on it, I wouldn't have known it was here. Now, with the system in Monday, as soon as it was marked good and received, then it would have notified me and told me it was here. So there's a lot of ways that you can put more advanced, better systems in place, but you don't have to start with that, right? Like you can just start with the basic stuff and you can work your way there. And what's going to happen, in fact, I would suggest starting with the basic stuff and building onto it, because when a lot of times when we first go into these type of things, we don't really know what we need, right? We think we know. And I've done this multiple times myself where I'm like, oh man, yeah, it needs to work like this. And I build out this big system of everything the way that I think it's supposed to work. And then we start using it and we're like, oh man, this actually sucks. Like this needs to be different. And then we have to go back and try to redo it. And it's like we're using it now and we got to change it. And that's just a pain in the butt. So, like I said, a lot of times it is better to start with a simple thing and just kind of build on it and say, man, it sure would be nice if this information was on here or that information is unnecessary, right? I put it on everyone and I've never used it. So by starting with something simple, you can kind of steer that a little bit better, right? Um, so yeah, that's what I have, right? And both of these things ultimately, like, they lead us to job costing. And so the purchase orders, again, we can now make sure we know the money that we're spending, we know what we're getting, and that's costed to a job. And then from the job number side of it, that's helping us to wrangle all of the random costs that are associated with projects and keep them tied to that one job. So we don't have stuff going to the wrong job and being misappropriated. Would that be a good word? We don't have things being applied incorrectly in our accounting system. So both of those tie into job costing. Job costing is a big deal. So all of that stuff is all connected together. Make sense? Hopefully, maybe. I don't know. Well, that's what I have for this week. And I am glad that it was a little bit short because I do have to get out of here and go to a soccer game, assuming that it's not canceled. There has been some threat of rain here, but I don't think it's raining yet. So we're gonna head that way. And we'll see you all next week. Again, thanks for stopping by. If there's anything that we can do, anything I can do Again, the phone number's on the bottom of the screen. Do not hesitate to pick up the phone and call me. I'm more than happy to talk to you. I don't know that I know the answer to your question, but maybe I know somebody that does if I don't. So definitely happy to talk to you about it. And I mean, if you want to just call and chat, feel free to do that too. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.